My name is Lee Bennett, and for 7 years my family called me missing. They printed my face on posters, they built a charity around my empty chair. Then I walked into their anniversary gala carrying the certified letter and the green return card my mother signed 6 days after I left. She saw me beside the service door and did not ask where I had been. She did not touch my face. She caught my wrist and whispered, "Please, not tonight." Beyond her shoulder, 400 guests were waiting to hear how she had never stopped searching. My sister was selling silver porchlight pins near the stage. A banner above them read, "Bring Lee home." I had been home for years, just not with them. My mother looked at the letter in my hand and understood that I had not returned to complete her miracle. I had returned to end her version of it. The ballroom smelled like lilies, coffee, and expensive carpet. My childhood photograph stood on an easel near the entrance. I was 16 in that picture, thin and sunburned, holding a library book against my chest. Someone had enlarged it until my face was taller than a dinner plate. Underneath, in my mother's careful handwriting, were the words, "We will leave the light on." I had seen that slogan online. I had seen it on tote bags, newsletters, and the side of a donated van. Seeing it 10 feet from me felt different. It felt like meeting a ghost who had my eyes and none of my choices. My mother, Marjorie, wore a midnight blue dress and the pearl earrings my grandmother left her. Her smile had always been her best instrument. It could welcome a stranger, correct a cashier, silence my father, and make a threat look like concern. That night it failed for 1 second, then it returned. "We can talk after the program," she said. "You can come to the house tomorrow. We can do this properly." Properly meant privately. Properly meant after the checks cleared and the cameras left. I looked past her at the stage. An empty white chair waited under a single porch lamp. "You told everyone I never contacted you," I said. Her fingers tightened around my wrist. "This foundation helps people. So tell them the truth." Her face changed again. The warmth vanished. "Do not punish other families because you are still angry. Before I take you back to the morning I left, tell me this. If your family turned your boundary into a public tragedy, would you correct them quietly or walk into the room they built around your absence? If stories about family, accountability, and hard boundaries matter to you, subscribe and stay with me. That sentence took me back to Cedar Vale, Virginia, where anger was the name my mother gave any feeling she could not manage. Cedar Vale had 1 grocery store, 2 churches, and a courthouse with white columns that looked grand until you walked around back and saw the rusted air conditioners. My father, Glenn, repaired heating systems. My mother worked part-time at the public library and full-time at being known. She ran coat drives. She delivered casseroles. She remembered every illness in town and every person who had failed to send a card. People called her generous. She was. Generosity was how she kept the center of every room. My sister, Tessa, was 3 years older. She could enter a conversation late and still become its subject. She was quick, polished, and good with people in the same way my mother was good with people. They both understood that attention could be organized. I did not. I liked quiet work. I labeled boxes in the library basement, repaired torn dust jackets, and spent my lunch breaks reading old newspapers on microfilm. My father used to call me his little archivist. He said it kindly when I was young. Later, he used it when he wanted me to stop asking questions. "There goes the archivist," he would say, keeping score again. We were not a family that screamed every day. That would have been easier to name. We were a family of corrected memories. If my mother opened my mail, she said I had left it where anyone could see it. If Tessa borrowed my car without asking, I had failed to communicate. If my father promised to support me and then agreed with my mother, I had misunderstood him. Nothing happened in the shape I remembered. By the time I was 24, I wrote important conversations in a small green notebook. Dates, places, exact phrases. I kept it behind a loose baseboard in my room because privacy in our house was treated like evidence of guilt. I had been saving to leave Cedar Vale for almost 2 years. The job was an assistant position at a historical archive in Richmond. It was not glamorous. The pay was modest. The apartment I found had uneven floors and a view of a brick wall, but it was mine if I could reach it. I applied without telling my family. I interviewed on my lunch break from the library, sitting in my car behind the Baptist church. When the archive director offered me the job, I cried so hard I had to pull over before driving home. I did not cry because the salary was good. I cried because someone had looked at my work and imagined me somewhere else. I planned to tell my parents after I signed the lease. I never got the chance. 3 days before the move, the archive director called the house while I was at work. My mother answered. She told him I was having an emotional crisis and could not accept the position. Then she called the apartment manager and said I had changed my mind. She found both numbers in the folder under my mattress. Tessa was the one who told her where to look. I learned all of this at Sunday dinner when my mother passed the potatoes and said, "You can stop hiding now. We fixed it." I remember the sound of my fork touching the plate. Small, clean, final. My father stared at his napkin. Tessa drank water. My mother reached for my hand as if she had rescued me from traffic. "Richmond is not safe for a girl alone," she said. I was 24. I had paid the deposit. I had packed half my clothes in boxes. You called my employer. I prevented a mistake. You opened my folder. You lied to us first. Tessa sighed and said I was making dinner ugly. My father finally looked up. Your mother was scared. I asked whether any of them had been scared of what would happen to me if I stayed. Nobody answered. That night, I took the green notebook, my birth certificate, 2 bags, and the cash I had hidden inside an old dictionary. I left my phone on the kitchen table because the account was in my mother's name. I left a note beneath it. I wrote that I was safe. I wrote that I was leaving by choice. I wrote that I did not want contact and would reach out when I was ready. The last line said, "Please do not report me missing." I signed my full name. Then I drove away before dawn in a car that shook above 60 miles an hour. I did not vanish into danger. I checked into a roadside motel outside Fredericksburg. The clerk was a woman named Rosa Alvarez with silver hair and bright red glasses. She noticed my hands shaking while I counted cash. She gave me a room near the office and set a paper cup of tea beside the key. She did not ask what I was running from. She only said, "The deadbolt works. I checked it myself." That was the first kindness I received after leaving, and it asked nothing from me. The next morning, I called the Cedar Vale Sheriff's Office from the motel lobby. Deputy Harris knew my father. Everyone knew my father. I told him I was an adult, I had left voluntarily, and I was safe. He asked whether anyone had hurt me. I said no. Then I corrected myself. Not in a way you can photograph. He was quiet. He said my mother had filed a missing person report before sunrise. I gave him enough information to verify my identity. I asked him not to reveal my location. He agreed. By noon, the report was closed as a voluntary departure. I wrote the call in my green notebook. I also mailed a certified letter. That mattered to me. Phone calls could become misunderstandings. Paper stayed where you put it. I addressed one copy to my parents and one to Tessa. I said I was alive, safe, and acting freely. I repeated that I did not consent to searches, public appeals, or the use of my photograph. I included the sheriff's case number in words. I gave them a post office box for written communication only. My mother signed for her letter 6 days later. The green return card came back to me with her name in blue ink. I placed it inside my notebook. For 1 week, nothing happened. I found a room in Richmond through a bulletin board at a grocery store. Rosa called a cousin who managed a downtown hotel, and that cousin gave me a night shift interview. I started at the front desk before I had unpacked. The archive job was gone. The director had hired someone else after my mother's call. He sounded embarrassed when I reached him. He said he wished I had contacted him sooner. I did too. But regret could not pay rent, so I learned the hotel system, wore a navy blazer, and greeted strangers until sunrise. Then a guest placed a newspaper on the desk. My own face looked up from the front page. Local family begs 4 daughters return. The article said I had disappeared after a period of emotional instability. It said I left without identification, money, or a vehicle. It said my mother feared I had been manipulated by someone online. Every part of that was false. Beneath the article was a photograph of Marjorie holding my childhood sweater. Tessa stood beside her. My father was behind them, one hand on my mother's shoulder. The article quoted him once, "We just want our little girl home." I called Deputy Harris. He sounded tired before I finished my first sentence. He had told my parents the case was closed. He had told the newspaper there was no active search. The reporter used my mother's statement anyway. Harris said he could not stop a family from asking for contact. I asked whether he could tell people I was safe. He said he already had. That sentence never appeared in print. Fear made a better headline than choice. The posters began that weekend. Tessa designed them. She had studied marketing in college and worked for a regional advertising company. My photograph appeared in gas stations, libraries, church halls, and highway rest stops. The poster said I might be confused and vulnerable. It listed my height, hair, and a scar near my elbow. It did not say I had contacted police. It did not say my mother had signed for a letter. It offered a reward funded by community donations. At the hotel, Rosa found me crying in the linen room. I had folded the same towel 4 times. She took it from my hands and sat on an overturned crate. I showed her the newspaper. She read every word. "Do you want to go back?" she asked. "No." "Do you want them to know where you are?" "No," she nodded. "Then we deal with what is true." She helped me find a legal aid clinic. She also changed my employee profile so guests could not see my last name. She never once told me that a good daughter would call her mother. A lawyer named Simone Reed met me in a narrow office above a pharmacy. She explained the limits of what we could do. I could demand that my family stop using photographs I owned. I could challenge false statements that harmed my work. I could document every contact. But forcing a newspaper to revisit an old local story would take time and money. Publicly identifying myself could reveal my location. "Your family has created a trap," Simone said. "Silence lets the story grow. Speaking may lead them straight to you." I knew. That was why I had brought the green card. Simone sent formal notices to my parents, Tessa, and the newspaper. The paper added a small online correction. It said law enforcement had confirmed I was not believed to be in immediate danger. My mother responded through a church friend, not a lawyer. She said no document could prove I was truly free. She suggested that whoever controlled me had written the letter. Tessa posted the same idea on a new page called Bring Lee Home. Within days, strangers were sharing theories about my life. Some thought I had joined a cult. Some thought I had been trafficked. One man claimed he saw me at a truck stop in Texas. I had never been to Texas. I wanted to answer them all. I wanted to type, "I am at work. I am paying my electric bill. I am learning which bus reaches my apartment before dawn. I am not buried beside a highway. I am not waiting for rescue." But each response would become a trail. So I did what I had always done. I kept records. I printed the posts. I saved the correction. I wrote dates in the green notebook. Then I went back to work. The first fundraiser was held in the Cedar Vale High School gym. I learned about it from a photograph online. Paper lanterns hung from the basketball hoops. Local businesses donated food. My mother stood at a podium beneath a banner with my name. She spoke about the agony of uncertainty. She said the family would use the money to continue searching and to help other families print flyers. That part sounded decent. For one night, I tried to believe the campaign might become something useful and move away from me. It did become useful. That was what made everything harder. A mother from another county contacted Marjorie after her teenage son disappeared. Volunteers printed posters and organized a search. The boy was found at a bus station. A local station covered the reunion. Donations increased. Tessa built a website. The campaign became a nonprofit called the Bright Porch Foundation. Its mission was to support families of missing people and honor Lee Bennett, whose absence lit the first lamp. My absence, not my life, not my decision. My absence became a thing they owned. The foundation rented an office beside the courthouse. It bought a used van. My mother left the library and became executive director. Tessa handled communications. My father served as treasurer even though he hated paperwork. Every newsletter opened with my photograph. Every appeal repeated that my family had received no credible word from me. The certified letter was never mentioned. The sheriff's confirmation vanished. My mother had found a way to turn refusal into tragedy. If I would not return to her, she would make the whole town wait with her. 2 years passed. I moved from the hotel desk to the reservation office, then into payroll. Rosa's cousin taught me the system. I took evening classes in records management. My apartment changed. My bus route changed. My last name did not, but I stopped using social media and asked my school to keep directory information private. I was not living under a false identity. I was simply not advertising my door. Rosa became the person I called when the sink leaked or my car refused to start. Her husband, Matteo, kept jumper cables in his truck and opinions about every brand of coffee. On holidays, they set one extra plate without making a speech about it. Their grown children argued, laughed, apologized, and moved on. The first time I saw Rosa say, "I was wrong," to her daughter, I nearly dropped a bowl. In my family, apologies were treated like surrender. In Rosa's home, they were maintenance. Every year on the date I left, the Bright Porch Foundation held a candlelight vigil. My mother read a letter addressed to me. "Wherever you are, the porch light is on," people cried. Children released paper lanterns. The foundation mailed the ceremony to my post office box because Simone had required all contact to go there. The envelopes were always addressed in Tessa's handwriting. They proved my family knew how to reach me. They just preferred reaching for a crowd. I answered once more. On the 3rd anniversary, I sent a second certified letter through Simone. It was shorter. I demanded that the foundation remove my name and image. I enclosed a notarized statement that I was safe. I offered to speak privately with an independent board member. I would not speak to my mother or sister. I would not reveal my address. I thought the offer was reasonable. Their response came from Tessa. She wrote that the family could not authenticate documents produced under unknown influence. She also warned that sudden changes to the foundation's story could endanger public trust. Public trust, she used those words as if I were the threat. Simone wanted to file suit. I was not ready. A lawsuit would attach my name to public records. Reporters would call. My workplace might become part of the story. I had built a quiet life one careful choice at a time, and I could not bear the idea of my mother walking into it with cameras behind her. So we preserved the evidence and waited. I told myself waiting was not weakness. Some days I believed it. The foundation grew. It partnered with police departments and search groups. It paid for hotel rooms, printed thousands of flyers, and trained volunteers. Most of that work was real. I read the annual reports. I saw the families they helped. I also saw my mother's salary rise and Tessa's company receive consulting payments. Nothing obvious looked illegal. It looked worse in a quieter way. My family had placed a real public service on top of a private lie. Any attempt to remove the lie could be painted as an attack on the service. On the 5th anniversary, my mother gave a television interview from my childhood bedroom. She had preserved it as if I had walked out the previous morning. The yellow quilt remained on the bed, my high school shoes sat beneath the desk. The camera moved across framed photographs and stopped on the green notebook's hiding place. The loose baseboard had been repaired. I wondered whether she had found anything else there. Then the reporter asked what Marjorie would say if I walked through the door. My mother looked directly into the camera. I would say there is nothing to forgive. I turned off the television. Rosa was sitting beside me. She did not ask why I laughed. There are sentences so perfect in their cruelty that laughter is the only sound they leave room for. Nothing to forgive. She had called my employer. She had opened my private papers. She had told the country I was unstable. Yet in her story, she was waiting to absolve me. That interview brought the Bright Porch Foundation its largest donation. A home security company became the lead sponsor. The company used my mother in commercials about keeping families safe. Her face appeared beside mine on billboards. The sponsor promised a major matching grant if the foundation expanded statewide. Tessa announced a 7-year anniversary gala called The Night the Light Stayed On. The event would celebrate families reunited and raise money for a new response center. I learned about the gala because an invitation arrived at my post office box. It was not meant as a peace offering. It was a mass mailing. My name remained on the donor database as LEAHBNNETT, missing family member. The envelope contained a silver porchlight pin and a card printed with my own childhood handwriting. The sentence had been taken from a school essay. Home is where someone notices you are gone. I had written that line when I was 11. My mother saved the essay. Tessa turned it into merchandise. Something in me shifted. It was not rage. Rage burns hot and makes you move too soon. This was colder. I had spent years protecting my location because I believed privacy was the only thing standing between my life and their story. But they were already inside my history. They had my photographs, my schoolwork, my room, my name, and an empty chair that spoke louder than I did. Silence had protected my address. It had not protected me. I called Simone. I am ready, I said. If you have ever watched someone use good work to protect a bad lie, tell me where you think the line belongs. Does helping other people excuse what they did to the person whose name made it possible? She did not celebrate. Good lawyers do not celebrate when clients reach the end of endurance. She asked what outcome I wanted. I had thought about that all night. I did not want the foundation destroyed. Families who needed search support had done nothing wrong. I wanted my name removed. I wanted a public correction. I wanted an independent board to control the organization. I wanted every donor told that the founding story was false. Most of all, I wanted the words voluntary adult written somewhere no one could edit them away. Simone sent a new notice to the foundation's board, not to my family. We included a copy of my identification, the sheriff's closure note, both certified letters, the green return card, and years of mail sent to my post office box. We offered a private video, meeting to verify that I was alive and acting freely. We gave the board 10 business days to respond before seeking an injunction against the gala's use of my name and image. The response came in 2 hours. A woman named Evelyn Park called Simone. Evelyn chaired the Bright Porch board. She had joined after the foundation helped find her niece, who had run away during a mental health crisis. Evelyn believed my family had not heard from me. She believed the police still considered my case unresolved. She had never seen the certified letter. Her voice shook when she spoke to me on video. She asked me to hold my identification beside my face. Then she apologized for asking. I need to make sure no one can dismiss this later, she said. I understand, I told her. I understood proof. Proof had been my companion longer than trust. Evelyn asked where I was. I said I would not answer. She accepted that. She asked whether I had ever authorized the foundation. I said no. She asked whether I wanted contact with my family. I said no. Then she closed her eyes for a moment. The board signed grant applications stating the family had received no verified communication, she said. Marjorie certified that statement. Simone leaned toward the screen. How many times? Evelyn said. Every year. That was the first major turn. Until then, my family's lie had been emotional and public. Now it was written inside the foundation's own records. The board had relied on it. Sponsors had relied on it. My mother had not merely told a dramatic story from a stage. She had repeated it on documents where truth had consequences. Evelyn began an internal review. She asked us not to contact the press for 1 week. Simone agreed only if the board preserved all records and stopped new promotional use of my image. The gala was 12 days away. Posters had already been printed. A television station planned to broadcast part of the program. The lead sponsor expected a renewal announcement from the stage. Every hour mattered. 2 days later, Evelyn called again. She had found a scanned copy of my first certified letter in the foundation's founding files. Tessa had uploaded it during the organization's first year. The file name was False Lead from Leah. Attached to it was an internal note. Tessa wrote, "Mom says we cannot validate this. If donors believe she left on purpose, the search becomes a family dispute." I read the sentence 3 times. My sister had not doubted the letter. She had understood exactly what it meant. The search becomes a family dispute. That was the truth they could not sell. A controlling mother and a daughter who left by choice did not fill gymnasiums. It did not earn grants. It did not place silver pins on 400 jackets. There was more. The scan included the signed green card. My mother's signature was clear. Tessa had highlighted the line where I said I was safe. Beside it, she had typed, "Do not circulate." The founding files also contained a draft speech from my mother. In the first version, she wrote, "Lee has contacted us but refuses to come home." That sentence was deleted. It became, "We have heard nothing." Evelyn sounded sick. "I built programs on this," she said. "People trusted us." I told her the programs could still matter. Then help me separate them from my mother. She looked at me for a long moment. "Will you come to Cedar Vale?" I felt every muscle in my back tighten. Simone started to answer for me. I raised my hand. "For the board meeting?" "Yes," Evelyn said, "and perhaps the gala, depending on what the board decides." I had not been to Cedar Vale since the morning I left. I had driven around it twice, taking longer highways to avoid the county line. The idea of returning made the Motel T rise in my memory. It made my hands feel 24 again. Rosa listened while I explained. Then she asked the question she had asked years earlier. "Do you want to go?" This time I said yes. Rosa drove. She said my old car was not allowed to carry a confrontation of that size. Mateo packed sandwiches as if we were crossing a desert. Simone met us at a hotel outside Cedar Vale. We used my legal name at check-in. That small act felt enormous. I stood at the counter and watched the clerk type Lee Bennett without alarms, cameras, or a mother rushing through the door. A name could be ordinary again. I had forgot. The board meeting took place in the foundation office beside the courthouse. My face was on the front window. Someone had painted the Porchlight logo over the scar near my elbow. Evelyn covered the window from inside before I arrived. I entered through the back with Simone and Rosa. 8 board members waited around a conference table. My mother, father, and sister were not there yet. The room went silent when they saw me. One man stood and then sat down. A retired teacher began crying. I did not know what to do with their grief. It was sincere, but it was grief for a person who had never existed. Evelyn introduced me. "This is Lee Bennett," she said. "She is not missing." The words were plain, no music, no candle. They were the most respectful introduction my name had received in years. I told them the short version. I left voluntarily. I notified law enforcement. I notified my family. I asked not to be used in public appeals. I had never authorized the foundation. Simone distributed copies of the records. Nobody interrupted. The retired teacher touched my mother's signature on the green card. "She told us this was fabricated," she said. Evelyn opened the digital file on a screen and showed Tessa's note. The room changed. Sympathy turned into something sharper. My family arrived 20 minutes late. Marjorie entered first, carrying a leather folder. She smiled at the board, then saw me. She stopped so suddenly my father walked into her shoulder. Tessa whispered my name. My father gripped the back of a chair. For one breath, we were simply 4 people in a room who knew each other's faces. I searched my mother for joy. I would like to say there was none. That would make the story simpler. There was a flash of it. A mother saw her living daughter. Then calculation covered it. "How did she get here?" Marjorie asked. Not, "Are you all right?" Not, "Can I hold you?" How did she get here, as if I were a document someone had failed to lock away. Evelyn said the board invited me. My mother set down her folder. "This is highly irregular. Lee has a history of impulsive behavior." Simone spoke before I could. "My client is present with counsel. You will not diagnose her." Tessa stared at me like she was trying to match my face to an older photograph. My father said, "Lee?" Nobody had called me that since childhood. The sound reached me. I did not let it move me. The meeting lasted 3 hours. Marjorie said she had doubted the letters because no loving daughter would refuse direct contact. She said the foundation had been created from genuine fear. She said later decisions were made to preserve stability for employees and families. Tessa claimed her note had been taken out of context. My father said he had trusted his wife and daughter to manage communications. That was his lifelong defense. He trusted women to do the harm and himself to benefit from not looking. Evelyn asked why grant applications said there had been no verified communication. Marjorie answered with a question. Was it verified? Simone pointed to the sheriff's closure note, the notarized statement, the video verification, and the signed receipt. My mother looked at each item as if quantity were a trick. Lee was not emotionally herself, she said. She had been influenced against us. By whom? I asked. The room quieted. My mother looked at Rosa. She had never met her. People who did not know our family. Rosa folded her hands. I knew Lee when she had one bag, no sleep, and no reason to trust anyone. I never told her what to do. That may be why she trusted me. My mother ignored her. She turned back to me. We looked for you. You knew I was safe. We did not know where. You were not entitled to know where. That sentence landed harder than I expected. My father flinched. Tessa looked down. My mother's face became very still. Entitlement was a word she used for other people. She had never imagined it could describe love when love refused a boundary. Evelyn suspended Marjorie and Tessa from operational control, pending an independent review. My father was removed as treasurer until the records could be examined. The board voted to stop using my image at the gala. Then practical problems rushed in. The ballroom was booked. Guests were traveling. Families supported by the foundation were scheduled to speak. Canceling would cost money the organization might not recover. The board decided the gala would continue under a revised program, without the false search appeal. My mother waited until the meeting ended. Then she asked to speak with me alone. I said no. She asked again. I said Rosa and Simone would stay. Marjorie led us into her office. My childhood photograph hung behind her desk. The room contained awards, framed news stories, and a glass case filled with porchlight pins. On a shelf sat a pair of my old sneakers. She had turned my absence into interior design. She closed the door and softened her voice. You have made your point. I came to correct the record. The record can be corrected carefully, not like this. Tessa stood near the window. My father remained in the hallway. Marjorie opened her leather folder and removed a typed proposal. It offered a staged reunion after the gala. I would enter the family home the following morning while a documentary crew filmed from across the street. The foundation would announce that its work had finally brought me back. My mother would retire with honor. Tessa would remain communications director. I would receive a consulting role focused on voluntary missing adults. I almost admired the speed of it. My mother could turn a collapse into a campaign before most people found a chair. "No," I said. She slid the proposal closer. "Read it." "I understand it. You have no idea how many people depend on us." "I know exactly why the programs should not depend on your lie." Her mouth tightened. "If you walk into that gala tonight, the press will reduce 7 years of work to one family disagreement." It began as one family disagreement. Tessa finally spoke. "Lee, the sponsor, is announcing the response center tonight. If they pull out, counties lose support. We can tell the truth tomorrow. Just let tonight happen." There it was, the request hidden inside every careful phrase. "Come home tomorrow. Stay missing tonight." My mother reached across the desk. She did not touch me. "Please," she said, "do not appear at the gala. Let people keep hope for one more evening." Hope. She had used my silence as raw material for so long that she could not hear the cruelty in that sentence. She wanted 400 people to keep hoping I was alive while I sat 6 blocks away, alive enough to ruin the program. I folded the proposal once and placed it back in front of her. "You are asking your living daughter to remain missing until the checks clear." My father made a sound from the doorway. My mother looked past me at him, angry that he had heard. Tessa rubbed her forehead. "That is not fair." "It is exact," I said. We left the office. Outside, the courthouse clock struck 5. Cedar Vale looked smaller than memory. The diner still had red booths. The pharmacy sign still flickered. A woman across the street recognized my face from the window poster and stared. For one terrible second, I wanted to run. Rosa took my hand. "Where do you want to go?" she asked. "To the gala." The board spent the next few hours rebuilding the program. Evelyn canceled my mother's keynote. She informed the sponsor that the founding story was under review. The sponsor's lawyer asked for documentation and postponed the renewal announcement. Nobody liked it. Nobody died from the truth. The response center would be delayed, not erased. That distinction mattered. I agreed to speak for 5 minutes. Simone wanted a prepared statement. I wrote one, then tore it up. Every polished sentence sounded like my sister. I did not want a campaign speech. I wanted facts. So I placed 4 things in a plain folder: the faded poster, the sheriff's closure note, the certified letter, and the green card bearing my mother's signature. I also printed Tessa's internal note. 5 pages, 7 years. Before the doors opened, Evelyn showed me the revised stage. The empty chair was gone. The porch lamp remained because several reunited families had used it as a symbol. I did not object. Symbols can change owners when the truth changes around them. My childhood photograph had been removed from the easel. In its place stood a sign that said, "Tonight's program has changed. Thank you for your patience." My mother arrived in the blue dress. She had not been invited backstage, but she entered through a side hall because everyone in town still opened doors for Marjorie Bennett. She found me near the service entrance. That was the moment I told you about at the beginning. She saw the folder, she saw the green card. She caught my wrist and whispered, "Please, not tonight." I pulled my hand free. She looked older than she had that morning. For a second, I saw the woman who packed my school lunches and sat beside me when I had pneumonia. Love does not disappear just because it becomes unsafe. That is one of the hardest truths I know. I loved parts of my mother. I also knew those parts had never stopped the rest of her. "You can come to the house tomorrow," she said. "Your room is ready." "My room is a museum for your story." "It is your home." "No, it is the last place you knew how to control me." Her eyes filled. The tears were real. Real tears do not always mean real accountability. "I thought you were dead," she said. "You signed the letter." "I thought someone made you write it." The sheriff spoke to me. I thought you were confused. I offered an independent meeting. I was protecting the foundation. Each answer moved the starting line. Fear became doubt. Doubt became protection. Protection became mission. There would never be a point where she simply said, "I knew you were alive," and chose the story. Tessa approached carrying a box of silver pins. She had removed her staff badge. "Mom, stop," she said. Marjorie turned on her. "You created the files. You told me what to write. You were an adult. So was Lee." That was the first honest sentence my sister had offered me in 7 years. It did not repair anything. It mattered anyway. The ballroom doors opened. Guests moved toward tables. Some had traveled with photographs of missing relatives pinned near their hearts. Others were families the foundation had helped. They deserved more than a scandal performed for revenge. I reminded myself of that as I walked inside. I was not there to humiliate desperate people. I was there because desperation should never be managed with a lie. The program began with Evelyn. She did not use music. She did not ask people to light candles. She said the board had received credible evidence that the foundation's founding narrative was inaccurate. A murmur passed through the room. My mother sat at a table near the stage, rigid and pale. My father sat beside her. Tessa remained at the back. Evelyn continued. She said the foundation's services would continue under independent oversight. She said an external review had begun. Then she said, "The woman whose name brought many of us into this room is alive. She left home voluntarily. She notified law enforcement and her family. She has asked to speak." No one applauded when I stood. I was grateful. I walked past tables covered in white cloth. I passed the home security sponsor, the retired teacher from the board, and a mother holding a photograph of her missing son. I felt their eyes move over my face, measuring it against 7 years of posters. On stage, the microphone was too high. Evelyn lowered it. That small gesture nearly undid me. "My name is Lee Bennett," I said. My voice shook once. Then it settled. "I am 31 years old. I was never abducted. I was never held against my will. I left Cedar Vale when I was 24 because my family interfered with my job, opened my private papers, and refused to let me make adult choices." The next morning, I spoke to the sheriff. 1 week later, my mother signed for this letter. I held up the green card. The cameras turned toward it. In that letter, I said I was safe. I asked them not to report me missing. I asked them not to publish my photograph. They did it anyway. My mother stood. "Lee, this is not the place." I looked at her. "You made every place the place." The room went still. I showed the faded poster. "This says I left without money, identification, or a car. That is false. This says I was emotionally unstable. No doctor said that. This says my family received no word from me. Here is the letter they received. Here is the sheriff's closure note. Here is an internal file showing the foundation knew." Tessa lowered her head. My father covered his mouth. I read one sentence from my sister's note. "If donors believe she left on purpose, the search becomes a family dispute." A sound moved through the ballroom. Not outrage exactly. Recognition. People know when a sentence reveals the machine behind a story. "My family did not spend 7 years searching for information," I said. "They spent 7 years rejecting the information that did not preserve their role. I was alive. I was safe. I was working, studying, paying rent, and building relationships with people who respected the word no. None of that fit beneath an empty chair." The mother holding her son's photograph began to cry. I turned toward her. "I am sorry my name was placed beside people who truly could not come home. I am sorry your hope was tied to a story that was not honest. The help this foundation gave your families was real. The reason my face was used was not." My mother reached the edge of the stage. "Think about what you are doing to them," she said. I faced the room again. That is why they deserve a charity built on truth. Evelyn stepped beside me. She announced that the board had voted to remove my name and image immediately. The organization would operate under a temporary name during the review. Marjorie, Tessa, and Glenn Bennett had been suspended from all authority. Donors would receive a written correction and the option to redirect or refund restricted gifts tied to my story. My mother stared at Evelyn. "You cannot erase the founder." I answered before Evelyn could. "You erased the person and kept the founder." Marjorie looked at me with something beyond anger. It was disbelief that the room had stopped following her. For years, she had controlled the order of facts. Now the order was simple. I left, I wrote, she signed, she lied. She climbed the stage steps without permission. My father stood but did not stop her. She came close enough that I could smell her perfume. "Tell them you forgive us," she whispered. The microphone carried it farther than she intended. I thought of the proposed reunion. I thought of the preserved bedroom and the school essay on tote bags. "Forgiveness is not a correction," I said, "and it is not a performance." Her tears came again. "I am your mother." Yes. That single word was all I gave her. It was true. It was not surrender. Tessa walked to the stage. The box of pins was gone. She asked Evelyn for the microphone. Evelyn looked at me. I nodded once. Tessa said she had received my first letter. She said she believed it. She admitted she wrote the note and helped shape the public story because the first fundraiser succeeded. "I told myself we were helping people," she said. Then helping people became the reason we never had to admit what we did to Lee. My mother said her name sharply. Tessa kept speaking. "We knew she was alive. We did not know where she was. Those are not the same thing." My father remained seated. People turned toward him. At last, he stood. He did not come to the stage. "I heard the deputy say she was safe," he said. "I let Marjorie say it was uncertain. I signed what they gave me." He looked at me. I was afraid of losing the family I had in the house. "You lost the daughter who left it," I said. He nodded. There was no defense left. For once, he did not search for one. The gala ended without candles. Guests stayed in their seats while Evelyn answered questions. Some demanded refunds. Others pledged support if the independent board remained. The lead sponsor withdrew its announcement but offered temporary funding for active searches already underway. The response center would be reconsidered after the review. The world did not collapse. It adjusted. Outside the ballroom, reporters waited. Simone gave them the written timeline. I answered only 3 questions. Yes, I had been safe. No, I did not want my current address public. No, I was not asking families to abandon the organization's useful work. Then a reporter asked whether I had come home. I looked at Rosa, who stood beside the coat check holding my folder. "I came back to Cedar Vale," I said. "That is not the same thing." We left through the front doors. My mother followed us into the parking lot. She called my name once. I stopped, but I did not turn around until Rosa asked whether I wanted to. I decided I did. Marjorie stood beneath the hotel lights with my father several steps behind her. Tessa had stayed inside with the board. My mother held the silver porchlight pin she had worn on her dress. "What happens now?" she asked. "The review happens." I mean to us. That question contained the whole problem. Even then, after the correction, she wanted the next moment organized around her. "I do not know," I said. "Will you come tomorrow?" "No." "Will you call?" "Not now." She pressed the pin into her palm. "How long are you going to punish me?" "I am not arranging your consequences. I am choosing my distance." She looked at my father. He had no words for her. He had spent a lifetime lending her silence. That night, it offered no shelter. We drove back to the hotel. Matteo's sandwiches were still in the cooler. Rosa and I ate them on the edge of my bed because neither of us had eaten dinner. Turkey, mustard, too much lettuce. Ordinary food has saved me more than once. Afterward, I took the green card from the folder and placed it on the nightstand. For years, it had been proof meant for a future room. The room had finally arrived. The independent review took 4 months. I did not control it, which was important. The auditors found that most program spending had supported real services. They also found that Tessa's company had been hired without competitive review and that my mother used foundation travel for personal appearances tied to her planned memoir. No money had vanished into a secret account. The truth was less cinematic and more familiar. They had treated a public mission as an extension of the family story, and the family story as their property. Marjorie resigned before the final report. Her statement said she was stepping aside so the work could remain larger than personal conflict. She still could not name the lie. Tessa resigned too, but she provided files and repaid part of her consulting fees. My father corrected the financial certifications he had signed. He was not charged with anything. Cowardice is often legal. The foundation adopted a new name, Clear Path Family Response. Its policies changed. Cases involving adults required confirmation of an active law enforcement classification. Families could not override verified statements from competent adults who chose no contact. Images required documented consent or a clear public safety basis. The board created a separate referral service for families dealing with estrangement because absence and danger were no longer allowed to mean the same thing. My photograph came down. The website published a correction on its front page for a full year. It said I had notified law enforcement and my family shortly after leaving. It said prior claims that no verified contact existed were false. It did not call the matter a misunderstanding. Simone insisted on that. The home security company offered me money to appear in a new campaign about privacy. I declined. I had not fought to leave one advertisement and enter another. Instead, I asked the company to fund the new consent policy and training. They agreed. My name was not attached. Tessa wrote to me through Simone. Her first letter was 9 pages. I read 2. It contained childhood memories, explanations, and a long section about our mother's pressure. It did not contain a direct apology until the final page. I sent it back with one sentence. When you are ready to write about what you chose, not only what she asked, you may try again. Her second letter was 3 pages. It began, I knew you were safe, and I helped say you were not. I read all of that one. I did not answer for several months. Accountability can open a door. It does not decide how wide. My father sent a postcard with no return request. The front showed the Cedar Vale courthouse. On the back, he wrote, I heard the truth early. I chose the quieter chair. I am sorry. I placed it beside the green card. His apology was late and small. It was also exact. I have learned not to confuse insufficiency with meaninglessness. Some things matter without being enough. My mother sent nothing for almost a year. Then a box arrived at Simone's office. Inside were my school essays, photographs, the old sneakers, and the yellow quilt. There was no letter. The items smelled like cedar and the lavender spray she used in my room. I kept the essays. I donated the quilt. I threw away the shoes. Returning property was not reconciliation, but it was the first time my mother released something she had used to keep me frozen. I finished my records management degree. The city archive hired me as a collections coordinator. On my first day, I signed an access policy that said donors could not control the interpretation of public records after giving them away. I smiled at that sentence. Records are not revenge. They are limits on revision. Rosa and Matteo came to my graduation. Rosa wore the same red glasses she had worn at the motel. When my name was called, she shouted so loudly that 3 rows turned around. I did not feel embarrassed. I felt located. A year after the gala, Clear Path invited me to review its training on voluntary adult disappearances. I agreed on one condition. My involvement would not be used in fundraising. We met in a plain conference room. No cameras, no empty chairs. I told staff that sometimes an adult leaves because home has become unsafe without becoming criminal. I told them police can confirm safety without handing over an address. I told them families deserve support for grief, but grief does not create ownership. After the session, a young caseworker asked how to tell the difference between protection and control. I thought of my mother's hand around my wrist beside the service door. Protection makes room for the other person's answer, I said. Control keeps changing the question until it gets the answer it wants. I have returned to Cedar Vale twice since then. The first time was for a meeting. The second was to visit the library basement where my old supervisor still repaired books. The foundation office no longer has my face on the window. The Porchlight logo is smaller now. The town did not vanish when the story changed. People found other things to discuss. I have not entered my parents' house. My mother and I exchange brief letters through a counselor. She has apologized for letting fear lead her. I wrote back that fear did not design merchandise, alter grant language, or hide a certified letter. Choice did. She did not answer for 6 weeks. Then she wrote, "You are right, it was a choice. That is where we are, not healed, not reunited, honest enough to stop pretending." Tessa and I have spoken by phone 3 times. We do not discuss holidays, we discuss facts. She no longer works in nonprofit communications. On our last call, she asked whether I remembered the night she taught me to drive in the church parking lot. I did. We laughed once, then we stopped. A shared memory can be warm without becoming a bridge you must cross. People often ask whether I regret going to the gala. I regret that it was necessary. I do not regret walking through the front doors. For years, I believed my choices were safe only while invisible. My family taught me that being seen meant being managed. The gala taught me something else. I could be seen and still belong to myself. The faded poster is in a flat archive box in my apartment. I do not display it. I keep it because history should not depend on comfort. The green return card rests beside it. One document shows the daughter my family sold to the public. The other shows the truth they received and refused. On the anniversary of the night I left, I no longer check the foundation website. I make dinner at Rosa and Mateo's house. Their grandchildren run through the kitchen. Someone burns the bread. Someone apologizes. Nobody performs forgiveness for a room. Nobody leaves an empty chair for me, because they know I will arrive when I say I will. That is home to me now, not a preserved bedroom, not a porch lamp aimed at cameras. Home is where my answer remains mine after I give it. My family said I disappeared. The truth is simpler. I became unreachable to people who believed access was love. They turned that distance into a charity and asked the world to wait for my return. When I finally came back, they asked me to stay hidden for one more night. I did not. I walked into the room alive. I told the truth in my own name. Then I went home.